Hello, everyone. How are you doing this day? It is Thursday, September 8th, 2022. The price of Bitcoin is $19,370. The price of Ethereum is $1,645. Ethereum is pumping a bit right before the merge. The merge. People are so excited about the merge. If you've been watching my streams lately, you know that I am less excited for that. I find that my enthusiasm for a lot of different things has curbed lately. Cue Curb Your Enthusiasm music. Let me talk about the super bubble, shall we? Should we get into that? Here's the prices right now. This is the kind of thing that people get really excited about, but I think numbers can be deceiving. I think you can look at numbers, they look fine, but they're not actually representative of what you're heading into. I heard an analogy recently from one Peter Zeihan. If you're not familiar with Peter Zeihan, he is a brilliant thinker who has articulated some things that I've had a hard time putting words to. And I only recently came across him and recognized that this is somebody I want to pay attention to. He may have crossed my path previously, but I wasn't really paying attention, and now I definitely am. Peter Zeihan says that when you throw a baseball, it's headed up until it reaches the apex of its parabolic curve, and then it's all downhill from there. So you can't always take past performance as an indicator of future performance. You can't always say, well, it's always been up, so it'll always be up from here forward. That's not necessarily true. Let's get into it, shall we? I'm going to start over here. Okay, let's first, before I get into the doom and gloom, let's talk about what's going on with Coinbase and the Treasury sanctions against Tornado Cash. Yikes. I'm just going to read this straight up. Brian Armstrong, founder and CEO of Coinbase, says, Coinbase is funding a lawsuit brought by 6 individuals challenging the Treasury's sanction of the Tornado Cash smart contracts. We support the Treasury sanctioning bad actors and have worked closely with law enforcement to help bring many bad actors to justice, but the Treasury's actions in this case hurt many law-abiding citizens in addition to a few bad actors, and we believe exceeds their authority. The issue is that Treasury has the authority from Congress only to sanction a person or their property, not an entire technology as they've done in this case. And he's right. This is totally unprecedented. They've gone after nations. They've gone after individuals. They've gone after individual entities. But this is not an entity that we're talking about. Tornado Cash was a software protocol, right? It has already been cloned. It has been tweaked. It has been redeployed. Can they really even effectively shut this down? Well, they can hurt it, and they can hurt a lot of good people who are just trying to protect their privacy. Privacy that they have a right to, a legal right to. Treasury is just doing what seems to them convenient and trying to outlaw certain technologies that are inconvenient for them. Not really how the law is supposed to work. Sorry, Treasury. Moving on with Brian Armstrong's tweet thread, law-abiding citizens deserve access to privacy and financial privacy deals with some of our most sensitive data. The 6 plaintiffs in this case used Tornado Cash for legitimate and important purposes, as did many others. Blockchains are not going to be open ledgers forever. Just like the internet moved from HTTP to HTTPS as the default, blockchains are going to move to more private transactions over time, and this is a good thing for consumer protection. We should encourage it, not hinder it. Interesting idea that he's putting forward here, that blockchains are going to be more private in the future. Maybe that's exactly what it says on its surface. Maybe he means that they will be more private in practice because there will be practices in place and layers and behaviors that make it more difficult to track a la Chainalysis. I'd be curious to dive more into that, Brian Armstrong, and understand what you said. Moving on with the tweet thread. Issues like this are best resolved through open, inclusive engagement. Legal action is a last resort, but the changes were made in this case before we could engage, and if these sanctions stand, the damage will extend beyond these 6 individuals and even beyond Tornado Cash. He's right. The crypto industry as a whole and economic freedom would be weakened. This is why, even though we're not the ones facing the brunt of these damages, we couldn't stand by. Hopefully, reason and justice will prevail, and we will find workable solutions to bring bad actors to justice together without broad overreach. And our door is open, and we're ready to help implement solutions that are workable for everyone. OFAC has done great work in the past, and we're happy to continue working with them on sensible solutions for this industry. Putting a good word for OFAC there in the end. Coinbase has plenty of history and incentive to work well with regulators. But he's absolutely right. This deserves pushback. This is definitely an overreach. Where is it? From Eric Voorhees. If you're not familiar with Eric Voorhees, he's one of the most OG Bitcoiners and cryptocurrency people out there, and I believe one of the most principled. I really admire Eric. I've met and talked with him a number of times. Eric says, a good Bitcoiner should defend DeFi on Ethereum when the government attacks it on grounds of surveillance. True. A good Ethereumer should defend proof of work on Bitcoin when the government attacks it on grounds of energy use. True. The war is money versus state. The latter is powerful. Do not squabble. The state is powerful. Money is important. But if they control money, if the state controls all of the money, then we're kind of screwed. This is exactly the reason that I have been so hesitant to call myself a Bitcoin maximalist. 90, 95%, maybe 99%, I am on board. The Bitcoin maximalists keep being right. I think they have the most grounded, deep understanding of the implications of these technologies, of this technology, of really Bitcoin. Bitcoin itself, right? That's the nature of the maximalist. They say it's Bitcoin, not blockchain, where so many others will say blockchain, not Bitcoin. But even beyond that, deeper than that, it's principles of individual autonomy, self-governance, etc. And Eric Voorhees is speaking to that here. If you really believe in these principles, then you should be willing to ally with somebody who you usually and often disagree with. If you agree on this basic principle of self-governance, of privacy, of being able to be the autonomous author of your own money and finance, being able to control your own finances, then we should all be unified on this. And while I am not a huge fan and supporter of Coinbase in many instances, this is a good move on their parts. So Brian Armstrong, bravo, good work. Sandbox Instagram has been hacked and is promoting all kinds of scams. I bring this up not because it's unusual, in fact it's not, but because I personally have been subject to similar behavior. Dozens of people that I personally know have gotten messages from some entity, somebody out there, who has copied my social media accounts. This is happening particularly on Instagram. Clearly the same with Sandbox. They got hacked. And they'll get a message that looks like it's from me. And Instagram is not good about making that distinction, right? It's not super easy to tell whether you're looking at a clone account or whether you're looking at an authentic account. I don't have a blue check. I'm not a big public personality. So they get a message that looks like it's from me saying, hello, old friend, how are you doing? Tell me about your Bitcoin investings. Would you like to send me some? I presume that most of my friends are educated enough to know that this is a scam. They certainly are educated enough to know to message me because I have gotten dozens of messages like that. But it doesn't take very much for a scammer to be profitable, right? You catch one person, you get one person to make a foolish choice. You can send thousands, hundreds of thousands, even millions. That's the game with spam, right? Send millions of emails. And if one person slips up and sends you some money, you win. This is a real problem with our existing networks. And there is not a really viable solution outside of a fundamental rethinking of what our identity looks like and how it behaves online. Not enough people are thinking about that. One of the few, as I will mention in virtually every stream that I do, is Balaji Srinivasan. He's given a great deal of thought to what identity online means. In fact, he's given a talk over and over and over about the coming pseudonymous identity wave, how we're all going to move to pseudonymous identities, where you have a persistent identity, but it is not the same identity as your offline real-world identity. You can have numerous pseudonymous accounts that have persistent history, but they are not you in the sense that it's all you. It's your face, it's your name, it's tied to your real-world IRL self. So, that's something worth doing. Start living pseudonymously in a meaningful way. I try to do that. I could be better at that. We should all move that direction. It also helps the dialogue. You can engage with people when you want to. You can disengage when you want to. It's somehow a lot harder to engage online in the year 2022 with your real-world identity. There are all kinds of pitfalls that I'm sure I do not have to enumerate for you. Douglas Rushkoff is a technologist, author, and futurist. I've been aware of Rushkoff for over a decade. He's a fascinating and brilliant person. He recently wrote a piece for The Observer on how super rich preppers are planning to save themselves from the apocalypse. The crux of this story is a personal account from Rushkoff, where he was flown to a tech conference and he thought that he was going to be speaking to people about technology broadly and its impact on society and how we can all live better with technology. What they in fact had him do was to enter a small private meeting with 5 ultra-wealthy, powerful individuals. And those people began asking him questions that tended more and more apocalyptic as the conversation proceeded. Is it Bitcoin or Ethereum is how it started out. Well, he gave whatever his answer might have been. But as they continued discussing, it was about, okay, so when the world ends and I'm in my bunker and I have my servants, how do I keep them from turning on me and appointing a new leader? Do I need to put shock collars on them? Do I need to lock up the food and only I have the unlock number? Rushkoff suggested that maybe they should work on pro-social behaviors like being friends with those people, which maybe had not occurred to them before. Here's an interesting thing that happens in organizations, whether that's a corporate structure or a private structure or a public structure, whatever it may be. If you are in a hierarchical organization, the people at the top have a perspective on things that the rest of the people on the bottom of that hierarchy do not have perspective on. And granted, the inverse is true as well. Somebody on the bottom of the hierarchy can be keenly aware of aspects of the organization that the leaders are not. Okay? I think it's telling that ultra-wealthy people are kind of freaked out, that they're buying and building apocalypse bunkers, whether that be in Middle America or in New Zealand or whatever it may be. And this gets to the point of my live stream, the crux of my live stream, what my thumbnail and title was about. There are numerous indicators pointing toward really ugly future happenings for us. I don't know who GMO Insights is. What I searched for was the name Jeremy Grantham. If you're not familiar with Grantham, he has a history of predicting economic movement well in advance. Quote, the current super bubble is the term that Grantham is using, super bubble. The current super bubble features a dangerous mix of cross-asset overvaluation, commodity shock, and Fed hawkishness. Each cycle is different, but every historical parallel suggests the worst is yet to come. Read Jeremy Grantham's latest viewpoint at this link. Grantham is not the only one saying this. Famed investor Michael Burry, subject of the the movie The Big Short. When did that come out? 2014, something like that? If you haven't seen it, it's a great film. I highly recommend it. The Big Short talked about the 2008 financial collapse that started on Wall Street in the United States and centered around real estate. Burry has a history of being right. He was so right in 2008 that they made a Hollywood feature film about this otherwise weird, quirky, and in many ways boring investor. Burry is saying that this is a different kind of bubble. This is an everything bubble. Michael Burry has just said, no, we haven't hit the bottom yet. This was just posted, yesterday? Yeah, yesterday. And Burry's a weird one. He deletes all of his tweets. If you can go find out his account, you'll not see any tweets there. He tweets and then he deletes them, all of them. There's no tweet history. Big Short sage Michael Burry's mother of all crashes prediction is underway, he says. It's happening right now. What catalyzed this for me was I watched a video on YouTube, Sorelli Amor Finance. Are you familiar with this YouTube channel? I have only recently started watching it, but I'm pretty impressed with this YouTube channel. Sorelli Amor runs a personal finance YouTube channel. She just uploaded this video about the super bubble and how it could kill America. Here's the reality. The Great Depression didn't kill America. I mean, it did that, but it did much more than that. That was a global depression. And what we're talking about here is potentially on the same scale, potentially larger. I think there are systemic issues that we have started to get a glimpse of in the last 2 years since the beginning of the global... Am I allowed to say COVID? Are we allowed to say that yet, or am I going to get shadow banned? It doesn't matter. This channel doesn't have a huge traction or following, so whatever. Since the beginning of COVID, I think all of us have become well aware of systemic problems across our society that pose real threats, not just in making people uncomfortable or infringing on them. It's not microaggressions, that's the term. It's not microaggressions that we're talking about. It's like legitimate, basic human needs we're talking about. Things that will disrupt your ability to feed and house your family. Those things are threatened by systemic issues that are not nearly as robust as they need to be. So while I almost always talk about Bitcoin on this channel, and I think a lot about Bitcoin, something else that I'm thinking about lately is, do I need to think beyond Bitcoin? Do I need to buy a plot of land, build a robust cabin, stock it with supplies? I'm no billionaire. I can't buy a super bunker in New Zealand, but I may want to invest in something that it's maybe like a bug out location, assuming things get real ugly and really bad. This is my doomsday penchant. I think along these lines naturally and way too much. Maybe it would be much more constructive, shall we say, to put some effort into a new business that generates cash flow and I can provide for my family that way. Great. Maybe both, right? Hope for the best, plan for the worst. Invest in a future, but also be prepared in case things go real south real fast, because really, honestly, they might. There are a lot of indications that the world is in a bad spot right now. Here's a funny one. If you're not following Wall Street Silver, I do recommend that one. Great account on Twitter. Anyone want to take a guess who's supplying China with natural gas? This is hilarious. The headline: China's top energy firms are sending natural gas to European nations struggling with Russia's supply cuts. Russia has cut Europe off from its natural gas. But they're still shipping some of that gas. Where are they shipping it to? Well, neighboring nation China. Guess where China is sending a lot of that? They're helping out Europe, who's suffering from the sanctions. Instead of two-way trade, we're just getting now a triangle. It's stupid. It's ugly. These sanctions are not working the way that people hoped that they would. I mentioned Peter Zeihan earlier. He's an interesting guy. He's got lots of opinions on China specifically, where somebody like Ray Dalio thinks that China is an ascendant nation who will be the dominant empire of the coming century, maybe centuries. Peter Zeihan says that the Chinese, I don't know if we would call it experiment, but the Chinese state, as we understand it, will collapse within this decade. Wild to think about that. He cites primarily population collapse. It has recently come out that China has dramatically overestimated their population. They overestimated by a factor of 100 million. 100 million, too many people, not a factor. They've overestimated by at least 100 million people. And this is understandable. If you look at a nation like China and people reporting numbers, they have strong incentives to make up good, positive numbers. So, China, you're not allowed to dissent, and you're encouraged to bump your numbers up, to fabricate positive-looking numbers. In the United States, you can say whatever you want, effectively, freedom of speech, and so we talk doomsday here. This came from a Peter Zeihan interview that I listened to recently. In the United States, we tend to catastrophize, talk about the end of the world, but because we're talking about it, we come up with solutions and the world doesn't end. In China, it's quite the opposite. You're not allowed to talk about the end of the world. It is prohibited. What you are allowed to do is to bump your numbers up, fabricate numbers, and say that things are great. In fact, they're even better than last year. Always better, never better. And the outcomes are very different. The United States tends to fix those problems, and China tends to sweep them under the rug. This person, who's been on screen for way too long, says that China's COVID policy, 95% of China's population is not in lockdown. 5% of their nation is in lockdown. That's a lot of people. They're saying, they haven't had any deaths. And the United States doesn't have lockdowns, but 50,000 people have died in the last 100 days. Okay, what did we say about China making up numbers? I'm not sure I even believe that, because if anybody did have a death, they wouldn't want old Xi finding out. So they would lie about it. This ostensibly I'm not going to play the audio for you, but ostensibly this is the sound of children in quarantine camps in China screaming for food. This kind of stuff is happening in China and it is terrifying. Peter Zeihan, again, in short, Xi is not just a megalomaniac, he's incompetent as well. And I will add to that nobody in a position of absolute authority like Xi Jinping has been can get it right. It's not humanly possible. No single person, in fact, no even small group of people, can be as efficient as free, open markets. Freedom is not only a better thing for individuals, it's better for society. We should be working on that on a societal level, but you should also be aggressively working on that individually. How can you individually be more free, less reliant? Again, Peter Zeihan, pre-Ukraine war, when the world thought Russia had an air force, this would have been ridiculous. Now, solid choice for killing tanks and artillery. The headline, Poland seeks purchase of 96 Apache attack helicopters from the U.S. Peter says that ultimately Ukraine will fall to Russia, which is a really grim idea, but he may be right. And Russia will not stop there. Russia will continue to try to take more land out of Eastern Europe. They will go into the neighboring nations, maybe Moldova. We're in a really precarious place in the world. Nothing is stable. Nothing is set. Nothing is firm and reliable. Which is why, even though the price is down dramatically and it has shown to be incredibly volatile and its purchasing power is down, which is why I rely on Bitcoin. Because the protocol itself is unkillable and you can't change the rules on it. So I rely on Bitcoin. I count on it. And I'm going to start counting on some other things too. I'm probably going to be working on my own self-sufficiency so that I can have my affairs in order no matter what the world around me decides to do. It's a very high level, big idea, but maybe we'll drill down on what exactly that means in practice in future videos. That's all I got today, team. I got to go. Let me know down in the comments what you would like to talk about in the future, whether that's cryptocurrency, technology more broadly, or even world issues, because we're going to broaden the horizons on this channel. Okay, we'll talk again soon. Bye.